the question was, you guys talked about pushing more LGBT characters instead of just changing orientation on existing characters, which we did talk about that. That is accurate. The question is, what LGBT characters? And I don't think it's not like a malicious question. They're specifically asking, like, what LGBT characters are out there. Again, similar to the last question, this is coming from someone that is not a comic book reader. So they're wondering what characters apply to this.
Which I wouldn't even help with because I'm not a huge comic book reader either, so I don't know many.
And Devin will say that part of the issue is that whenever it's been done in most instances,
it's the blurry lines.
It's been so tokenistic and like, by the way, this guy's gay. You didn't know, and the thing is,
or it's really bad, like the North Star wedding issue.
That's what I was just.
Would you say
Devin was just about to say? Where it's like, my God, some of it is tasteless. Some of it's done with very little sensitivity. So again, they're not making them characters; they're making them gay.
Yeah, it was just North Star is getting gay married. Okay, North Star hasn't been featured in the X-Men comics like at all, and the guy he's getting married to. He's basically being introduced with this. This is completely absurd. There's no development.
I think so far my favorite LGBT character is probably Batwoman.
Okay, Batwoman's pretty awesome.
This is the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah, Devin feels like
Renee Montoya.
Yeah, Devin feels like that was so well executed, and the fact that DC didn't have the stones to let the writer follow through on that still to this day really aggravates me.
Yes.
To say that you can be in a relationship but you can't get married and things like that in a DC comic. Granted, I'm sure that philosophy has changed now a few years later.
How many times has DC changed its philosophy? Yeah. But always too slow.
But I think that pairing is my favorite LGBT pairing.
And a good way, and anyone can get exposure to Renee Montoya. She's a major character in the Batman animated series.
Yeah, and with the Question in the JLU.
That's true. That's actually a really good point. And wow, I didn't realize that. That's right. That's so true. I know, Mike. You said you kind of have to recuse yourself from the Question because not super familiar.
I guess I would say Cap.
What? We had this discussion already.
And we agreed. Ship Cap and Bucky.
See, the one I'm going to go with, especially maybe because I've reread the character recently, Lord Fanny from The Invisibles. Lord Fanny is
Grant Morrison, yo.
That Grant Morrison. Lord Fanny is a transvestite who's also transgender. So she both dresses and identifies
training
as a
everything.
Woman. Yeah. She's a witch from what country is she from? It's not Colombia. I'm gonna have to look that up.
If only we had the internet at our disposal.
No, but she's from South America and is a witch, and
not a doctor.
No,
just
a
witch.
But the interesting thing is, she comes from a line of witches.
Okay, so she's in a lineage.
Yeah, and it was basically, she was born a boy, but she identified as a girl, so she was able to become a witch, which is normally only supposed to be allowed for women. Yeah, because it
would be a warlock, yeah.
And even in the family, in the bloodline, it's supposed to be for women. But one of the points of the story that his grandmother, who is like this super witch, helps raise him.
Watch your words, boy. Not super bitch, super witch.
Super witch. She basically says when he goes through this ritual to commune with the gods to become a witch, she basically says, it doesn't actually matter if, as long as he's, a girl, she's a girl.
Okay, I might actually read this now. I think this is fascinating. And even Grant Morrison was like, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, the big thing is Grant Morrison was very much into...
trannies?
He was into small, emerging cultures very early in his life. He was in, the punk scene for music in Britain, and that kind of led him into, I wouldn't say fetish culture, but club culture, very, very, very early. And so he got exposed to a lot of stuff that is only basically now mainstream.
Yeah.
So people in The Invisibles are based on people he met. He said it in interviews. He said it in the annotated stuff for The Invisibles. Basically, everyone in the book, that's a character, basically just not the villains.
Yeah.
Because the villains are specifically meant to be two-dimensional or even one-dimensional in some cases. They're all based on people he met and knew. And throughout The Invisibles, Lord Fanny is this really vivacious, crazy character that's at one point she says like, the light has returned to your lives, my friends, because she comes back from she was away with someone for a little bit and then comes back into the story, and it was really interesting reading this. I read The Invisibles years and years and years ago, pretty soon after it came out, not right when it was coming out.
So I was going to ask a couple questions.
Yes,
because I'm like honestly intrigued. What year did this come out in?
Invisibles was 98. I
So-
want to say it might even be pre-98. If I had to, if I was on Jeopardy, I would say 98.
So 15 to 20 years.
Yes.
And all this stuff that's like you're reading it, and I'm assuming it didn't bother you.
Oh no, I read this. I would say I read this in probably 2000.
Yeah.
I read
Part
The
of-
Invisibles.
As Devin contended earlier, part of good art is to challenge you and expose you to these ideas. And Devin feels like reading that when a person is young
Yep.
certainly gives you an advantage because it opens up these different vistas and perspectives that otherwise you might not be exposed to. And it also shows you there's nothing dangerous about this. There's nothing scary about
Exactly.
There's
That's
no
kind of where I
more
was
fear
going.
from this
It's
type
normal.
of behavior than
It's normal.
any other person.
Absolutely.
Yep,
And that's kind of what I was going into.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Devin thinks that's one of the reasons why art, and especially popular art, video games, comic books, movies, popular art is so essential in shaping the narrative for young people, because young people are perpetually immersed in pop art. They don't even know it. And so they're getting buffeted by these messages. And if the messages are positive, in that case, and inclusive, they're going to grow up and they're not going to think anything of it, which is the way that it should be.
It
with
should
that
be,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say that Invisibles I think did really well, and I think it still holds up in that regard now, is there is stuff in the Invisibles that you would consider stereotypical. Like Lord Fanny is a prostitute. Like she goes out and prostitutes herself, but it's tied into South American mythology. Why? Which is actually pretty interesting considering like the gods that come into play. But it was interesting because at the time that really was a stereotype for transvestites and for transgender people.
Still is.
It still is a stereotype, but I think the way it works in the Invisibles is because, let's face it, stereotypes exist because it's something you're exposed to, which reinforces a stereotype.
Well, a lot of the transgender people that are prostitutes happen to find themselves in that lifestyle because it's so expensive.
Right.
The hormone replacement is not something many places will cover. Even in America today, will not cover under insurance. You have to pay out of pocket for it. I have a few friends that have moved to states where such things are required to be covered by your insurance. Yep. And the transgender communities are flocking to those states so that way they can get their surgeries.
Also, especially when Invisible was written, like, mid to late 90s, and I think Walter would, definitely have a good take on this. Then, especially as far as like work, that made your work life extremely difficult.
Especially if you transitioned at work.
Exactly.
Oh, God. That would be a nightmare.
I mean,
20 years ago?
Just 15 years ago, it's okay to be homosexual.
Differently at work, and people suddenly, like, you go into work one day dressed as a goth person, and people are going to...
you would hear about it.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
You come in, and suddenly you're a man, and you're dressed as a woman, and these people don't understand that.
Right.
They don't understand why you're doing this.
Yep.
Yeah, it's... And worse for that is the person that actually has to go into work dressed like that.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's something that they eventually have to get out of. They have to eventually get over that fear and be who they're going to be and dress how they're going to dress for the rest of their lives in public. But those first few days must just be utter hell.
I think one of the things the Invisibles also did really well is with Jack Frost. Jack Frost is basically the main character, kind of. The Invisibles themselves are all the main characters, but he's kind of the focus of events in the story. And he's a sympathetic character that his immediate reaction to Lord Fanny is he's prejudiced. And he's but he's not malicious about it. He's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And because you're sympathetic with, it would be easy to paint it as, that's, homophobic or transphobic because, a main character who's a quote-unquote good guy, which the Invisibles are good guys in the book, is not cool with this at first. But it's like, no, because you identify with Jack Frost because he is a main character, it helps you understand his situation more, and then as he goes through the book, he becomes completely cool with Lord Fanny and is like, oh, okay, and basically sees that this is just something new to him, but it's like a lot of stuff that's new to people. It makes you feel uncomfortable because it is new.
It changes your perspective of life because
And
you
that-
thought things were only one of two ways.
And that's
And you
an
find out there's something different.
It's an essential part of growth. The
Yes.
discomfort that comes and the disequilibrium that comes with new ideas. So it's like when you read something, you should be a little bit discomforted because that's the role of art.
Yes, and I think the Invisibles did that really well. Where I mean, you have basically halfway through the Invisibles, that's like they're at a dance club hanging out, and like Jack Frost is dancing with Lord Fanny because he loves. One of the things they establish about Jack Frost is he loves to dance.